Hello, welcome to my podcast, Crime, Mystery, History and Mayhem. My name is Kate and here I talk about true crime, history and anything that tickles my fancy. If you like history, true crime and random stories that usually relate to those two genres, then you have come to the right place. I also have a YouTube channel if you would like to watch me deliver stories. Please support my YouTube channel by hitting the like button, subscribing to my channel and pressing the notification bell. This way you never miss out on any of my future uploads. I hope we are all well today, and with that let's jump into another story. So Henry II of England, he was a sneaky guy. He knew how to play the political game and always seemed to come out on top. This man, he had a bunch of tricks up his sleeve, like making secret deals and turning on his friends when it suited him. But he wasn't just a bully, he also knew how to talk his way out of a tough spot and make deals with his enemies. Despite his shady tactics, Henry II was a pretty successful king and helped set up a lot of stuff that we still use today in England. Most of the time, politicians, they're not really the cool kids in town. They often have a hard time getting everyone on their side, and this is true for many countries all over the world. We have our own politicians here in New Zealand that I'm not too fond of. So, you know how artists, athletes and scientists are usually pretty popular and respected for the stuff that they do. Like, even when people don't really like that kind of thing, they can still appreciate their work. But politicians, not so much. There's often a lot of suspicion around them and people wonder why they even got into politics in the first place. So back in the day, things weren't all that different when it came to political careers. The thing is, feudal societies were pretty rigid, so you didn't really have much of a choice in what you did, basically as a job. Your life was pretty much premeditated, so if you wanted to get into politics, you kind of had to just go with the flow and, hope that you get the job you want. It's not like nowadays where you've got more options. You basically can control what you do with your life. So King Henry II was quite the character in his day. He was always making fun of the King of France, even though he was supposed to be on his side. He even got on the bad side of the Pope once. But the thing Henry is most famous for is accidentally getting his former friend turned enemy, Thomas Becket, killed. So back in medieval Europe, they had this thing called feudal society. It was like a pyramid where everyone was put into different levels depending on their status. So at the very top were the royals, the kings and queens, and their princesses and princes who had all of the power. Next came the nobles, who were rich landowners and had a lot of influence. Then there were the commoners, who were mostly farmers and workers. Finally, there were the townsmen, who were the merchants and craftspeople living in the towns. So each level had to be respectful to the ones above them. This whole system had a big impact on how things worked back then. The real picture was quite different, and nothing showed it better than the mixed up relationship between Henry II and King Louis of France. So Henry, he was a boss back in his day, ruling over a bunch of different kingdoms. But don't be fooled by the fancy name Angevin Empire that you may see on maps today. The territories were not all united, and the only thing that connected them was Henry, who was the boss of all of them. So just remember that the Angevin Empire was really just a patchwork of different regions ruled by one dude. Henry had tons of land in France, like Normandy, Brittany, and Maine. He was supposed to be the French king's buddy, but he was actually way richer and had more power than him because he owned so much land in both France and Britain, and he would often brag. So this really ticked off the King of France. So do you know what Henry did? He swooped on in and stole the King of France's wife, Eleanor. This was a major blow to Louis, and it left him feeling even more humiliated than before. So Louis and Eleanor were married for a really, really long time, but they had a huge problem. They didn't have a son for so many years, and this really worried Louis because having a male heir, it was really, really important for kings back in those days. Plus, their marriage wasn't exactly a happy one, so making a baby wouldn't be so much fun. Then Henry, he hits the jackpot when he got his hands on Aquitaine. His French kingdom became massive, stretching from the English Channel to the Pyrenees. But poor old Louis, he must have felt like such a fool. Henry and Louis had beef, and they went to war. They fought, but nobody could clearly win. So Henry came up with a smart idea, and he decided to try something else. So back in the day, the Pope of Rome, he was a big deal, like way more important than now. Not that he's not important now, but he was like super important back then. The lords who ran Europe were always fighting each other, which really ticked off the Pope. So when Henry's people came asking the Pope to settle a fight between the King of France and him, he was totally down to help. So Louis, he was way more religious than Henry. So even though the negotiations weren't in Louis's favour, he did accept them because of his faith. It wasn't an easy decision to go with what he was being told, but Louis was a devout person and he believed that it was important to pursue a peaceful resolution to the conflict. So even though the terms weren't good, Louis remained committed to his decision. So apparently this is how it went down. Henry was like, yo, let's unite our families by having my son Henry marry Margaret, who was Louis's daughter. So back in the day, when a guy wanted to marry a girl, her dad had to pay a bunch of money called a dowry. But in this case, instead of money, Henry asked for some castles in Normandy. And Louis was like, sure thing, man, and he just gave them over to him. This way, Henry got what he wanted without starting a fight, just by being smart and making a deal. Marrying off his kid. Yeah. But Henry and Louis, their truce didn't last long, and things went sour pretty quick. So towards the end of 1160s, these two were fighting each other, but neither of them could get the upper hand. So they started talking, and they're trying to figure out how they can make peace. I mean, their kids are married, so they kind of have to be nice to each other. So Henry wanted to bring peace between the two families, and he had an idea. He proposed another marriage pact. I know. It didn't work the first time, so why would it work the second? Maybe second time's the charm? I don't know. So Henry and Louis made a deal to get their kids married. Again. These are different kids though. Henry offered his son Richard to marry Louis's younger daughter Alice. So they agreed on everything in late 1169, and Alice was sent to live in England with Henry until she was old enough to get married. Because the thing is, she was a kid. She was only 9 years old. People were so messed up back then. So as time passed, Henry started to fall for Alice. I know, gross. Henry's affection for this young princess grew stronger and eventually turned into an infatuation. So when Alice reached the age of marriage, Henry decided that she would no longer be marrying his son, and instead she would become Henry's mistress. The thing is, Richard thinks he's getting married, so how's he going to tell his son, oh no, you can't have her now? So back in 1177, word was going around that Henry and Alice were doing more than just hanging out. Apparently, they were supposed to get married, but Henry never went through with it, even though he was being urged by important people. So people kept on saying that Alice was Henry's side piece until he passed away in 1189. And some even said that they had kids together, but we don't know. So back in those days, getting cheated on by your spouse was considered a major no-no that could mess up your whole reputation. So, Prince Richard, he was meant to be marrying this lady and she basically cheated on him with his dad. So he got it worse than others would because it was his own dad. Yeah. That made him super angry, and he started to hate his dad's guts. So much so that he rebelled against him a bunch of times in the 1170s and 1180s. It is hard to imagine how tough it must have been for Prince Richard to have his own flesh and blood betray him like that. Horrible. And that is today's story. Please do check out my YouTube channel. I have literally got hundreds of stories over there. I'm also on Instagram, Patreon, and TikTok under Crime, Mystery, History, and Mayhem. Except for Facebook, where I am under the username Kate Sharon, because my name is Kate and my middle name is Sharon. Have a lovely day, be kind to one another, and I will be talking to you soon. Bye bye.